Hello everyone. I'm Francisco Mayorga Marin. I'm professor and researcher of the School of Public Health here in Nicaragua in the National Autonomous University of Nicaragua. Today I'm gonna presenting the study, the investigation of epidemiological characteristic of road traffic injuries involving children in three Central American countries in 3 years. This study was published in the International Journal Environmental Research and Public Health the last year. Motor vehicle collision account for 30% of all injury-related deaths before the age of 20. Using worldwide NVC data as 2018, it was estimated that NVC caused 1.5 million deaths annually and are key cause of mortality among 5 to 13 years old. Here in Latin America and the Caribbean, where almost half of the population is under 25 years. The mortality rate related to MVC among 5 to 14 years old is almost twice the worst mean rate. This is an alarming public health problem that we have not only in Latin America, but in Central America. The trend of deaths in this country shows a significant decrease of 24% over time. However, when the United States and Canada are removed from the model, the remaining 27 countries show an increase in the trend of MVC fatalities. Few studies have reported MVC fatalities focusing under 20 years old. In 2017, this age group represents 16%. Although there were no specific subanalysis by age in this study, most fatalities occurred in March and April on Saturdays and Sundays at night at the site of MVC and among males. The methods that we use, we conduct a descriptive retrospective study to understand the epidemiology of traffic-related infant and childhood mortality in Costa Rica, Panama, and Guatemala between 2012 and 2015. By the way, there were three countries that were selected because they have official online reports of MVC-related injuries by age for the study period, and combined these three countries represent the 45% and the area and 55% of the population of Central America. We use datasets. The datasets also specified in the mechanism of MVC, although the reporting was not standard. To facilitate comparison, we classified the mechanism of MVC report by each country in one of the following four categories. First, passengers in a MVC. The victim was a passenger in MVC. This category excludes vehicles moved slowly by human power, motorized wheelchairs, and motorcycles. Second, the pedestrian and in an MVC. Here, the victim was along a road where the MVC occurred. Third, rollover in an MVC. The victim was in an overturned motor vehicle. And the category other. This category shows the victim fell from a motor vehicle in motion. The victim presents a combination of the previous categories of the mechanism of the MVC is not otherwise classified. To estimate the crude injury and mortality rates, we obtain the total population estimate for 0 to 14 years old in each country and each year from the World Bank data. To our data analysis, we use some methods. The first methods was the frequencies. In the frequencies, we extract the data sets and compare the absolute and relative frequencies of the total number of victims, injuries, death, and mechanism of MVC reported by 3 countries for 0 to 14 years old from 2012 to 2015. Next, we calculated the three different crude rates, understood as geographic area multiplied by a constant, which is a multiple of 10. Medians reported for these crude rates were calculated by averaging the two middle values in the 4-point data series. Then we calculate the crude injury rate. We calculate this crude injury rate per 100 population to 0 to 14 years old by dividing the total number of injuries with the respective years estimate for the total population to 0 to 14 years old. Then we calculate crude mortality rate per 100 population to 0 to 14 years old by dividing the total numbers of deaths with the respective years estimate for the total population 0 to 14 years. Then we calculate the crude fatality rate by dividing the total number of deaths with the number of NVC events reported in each country each year. Fatality rates were compared with an independent sample of chi-square test setting alpha to 0.05 significant rate. Then we did trends over time. We used ordinary least squared or OLS linear regression to estimate the trends over time with overall correlation and determination R squared. Coefficient set to 0.05 alpha level. Here are the results. As the results that you can see, Costa Rica, Guatemala, and Panama were the only Central America's country with comparable publicly available official data during the study periods. As you can see, we found a total of 12,020 MVC related injuries, and the 431 MVC related deaths involving 0 to 14 years old. As we can see also, the rate or the deaths and injuries were increasing during the time of these 4 years. Then, as we can see, this figure is the most frequent type of MVC in Costa Rica, Guatemala, and Panama in the 3 years. As we can see, the 3 countries have different reporting categories for traffic events. The most frequent mechanism of MVC in Costa Rica and Guatemala was MVC as a passenger. In Panama, the most frequency mechanism of MVC was MVC as a pedestrian, followed closely by MVC as a passenger also. Together, rollovers and other MVC represent less than 20% all reported MVC-related deaths. In the table 2, we can median annual crude MVC-related injury rates were 80.85 for Costa Rica, 14.93 for Guatemala, and 119.35 for Panama. The median annual crude MVC mortality for this study were 0.87 for Costa Rica, 1.22 for Guatemala, and 2.14 for and 1.83 for Panama. As we can see, the chi-square was significantly statistically as the p-value was less than 0.001. Also, we can see the trends over time analysis for MVC-related mortality, injury, and fatality rates. These trends over time analysis by country reveal that in Panama, all rates of mortality, injury, and fatality showed a decreasing trends. However, these trends did not reach statistically significance. Costa Rica showed the same downward trend for mortality and fatality rates, but the injury rates tended to increase by 37.6% each year, again without reaching statistically significance. In the case of Guatemala, however, all three rates of mortality, injury, and fatality increased to a statistically significant extent, with a p-value less than 0.005 every year by at least 5.6%. To the best of our knowledge, this study is the first one to use publicly available official country-level data to describe, compare, and estimate rates of MVC-related injuries in three Central American countries. We found that in the 4 years of the project, the 12,020 infants were involved in an MVC, which resulted in 43 deaths. Victims involved in the MVC as a passenger or as a pedestrian represent 80% more of all the mechanisms of MVC. Although crude MVC-related injuries rates were higher in Panama and Costa Rica, Guatemala demonstrated a statistically significant trend towards increase in its injury rates. On the other hand, Panama and Guatemala present the large crude MVC related mortality rates. However, the trend over time analysis revealed that in Panama, 3 was a trend towards increased rates over time, while in contrast, in Guatemala, crude mortality rates increased significantly. The case fatality rates are higher in Guatemala with a statistically significant trend to increase over time. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals include an action plan for infant, childhood, and adolescent health. This plan confirms that there is a great challenge for health agenda in the Central American region in terms of policies and resources to improve and support a safer built environment, safer drivers, and safer vehicles for all of us in the Central America specifically. The Central American Traffic Safety Manual is a concert effort among the 6 Spanish-speaking countries to establish standards, clear and specific regulation in the traffic safety. So as a conclusions, we have that we found higher mortality and fatality rates for comparable populations in Panama and Guatemala than in Costa Rica. These results could be due to Costa Rica being the only country in the region with traffic safety policy enacted and compliances with international standards. We most recently we can see also Panama. It's other country that is taking these efforts. The large numbers of deaths in Panama and Guatemala and the high fatality rate in Guatemala could be the result of non-specific legislation mandating CRS and the lack of road safety preventive campaigns. The increase in fatality among under 5 years old is associated, at least partially, with a lack of a specific legislation on retention system and the lack of adequate information and education campaigns. In Central America, public policies aiming at reduce MVC-related infant and childhood injury, mortality, and fatality rates urgently need to be created. This study provided evidence that MVC involving children as a passenger or pedestrians, sorry, were the traffic events that accounted the most fatalities. Policymakers could use this and other scientific evidence available to develop and implement policies and specific legislation of road safety and CRS in compliance with sustainable development goals and decrease the traffic-related infant and childhood mortality rates. We recommend for the countries and the policymakers and the stakeholders that they they can improve the data. They can improve the data in the countries, in the institutions that relate all the data regards for investigation, for education, for the diffusion also of the information to our people. So this time it were three countries, but in the next years we wish to have all the Central American countries for evidence to policymakers. Panama is it's one country that in the years in the recent years they are planning politics about evidence or generated evidence. And that's very fine. But we recommend these all countries in Central America, and not only Central America, but Latin America, that the data and the institutions that recollect data they can use this data for policy and politics. Thank you very much. That was my intervention for this prestigious event. I'm from Nicaragua. Francisco Mayorga, it's greeting you. So thank you very much.